happy almost Halloween.
We didn't do a costume thing again this year.
I know. Well,
We'll see if we make it to next year.
well, the 31st is kind of in between, so it
Yeah,
could
it's
work.
tricky. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to dress up after Halloween. It's hard
There's
to.
also All Saints Day. You can still kind of show up with something. Mm,
Good to see everyone.
mm.
Mm.
Do you want to check the other page and see your fellow yogis? Hello. Mm, hello. Mm,
Everyone is safe, warm. I'm in Ohio right now, working my way west, so hopefully I'll be back home by next Sunday. Surprisingly warm actually these days here. But it's been nice to get a taste of autumn. Mm. Okay, I'm gonna get started. Mm. So finding a seated posture that feels as stable and comfortable and upright as possible right now for you, whether it's the middle of the day or the end of the day, the beginning of your day. Attuning just to the appropriateness of the amount of energy you're needing to put into sitting upright. Letting your eyes come to close. And starting to feel into your experience right now in the present moment. What feels most alive, most clear. Always helpful to scan through the different sense doors. Even if there isn't much noticeable happening, just this acknowledgement, honoring the subtle or intense experience of the sensations, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensations throughout the body. Sensations that are coming and going on their own. We're not needing to conjure them, manipulate them. Something real about them. There is something grounding in this kind of honoring relationship with what's happening in our direct sensory experience. We so often prioritize the experience of the mind, the heart, thoughts, emotions, imaginings, all the considerations that we're so involved in. It's important at times to remember to bring these other sensations to the foreground, amplifying this range of where we might find stability outside of the heart mind. Even though, of course, all of these phenomena are changing as well, moving, coming to birth, passing away. Sometimes they are a refuge from the volatility of the heart mind. Sometimes it's the rhythm of the breath that we tend to encourage, that receptivity of in the abdomen. Can be soothing, needing to constrict the mind or the attention or strain for something called concentration. It's kind of a receiving of the tide of in breath and out breath. Not worrying about precision, detail. It's noticing that it's coming and going on its own. The mind can impact it, can affect it. To a large degree, it's also just something the body is doing naturally, like the rhythms of the heart, any other rhythms the body is producing and experiencing internally. We may have more or less sensitivity to. And of course, these sense doors are all sensitive to experiences that are beyond our control. And then we have the heart mind itself, whether it feels like something that's happening in a particular part of the body or is ambiguous in its connection to physicality. There is something similar and something different about the mind, of course. The sense that we can influence it more directly, make choices on purpose, bring things to mind, direct the attention. But on the other hand, there is a flood of experience also happening of knowing, even on subtle levels of images and thoughts and fabrications of all kind, more similar to the other sense stores based on past momentums arising because of past action, influence. We see how easily we can be entangled in all that we've discussed or imagined, observed, read, contemplated, even from just one day. Never mind many days, many years, many lifetimes. There can be a tension we notice in the mind, a strain, a stress, a worry, a wanting, an overwhelm. Sometimes it's important to see these aspects of natural response to the insecurity in our lives, in the world, our bodies, our direct experience. But often there's also a space for acceptance or peace, some part of the mind that has confidence in its ability to be with things as they are and not need things to be the way we want them to be, not denying our preference, but not being imprisoned by it either. We can respond to our anxiety, our worries, our fears, our desires with compassion. Of course, the heart longs for safety, stability, care. And even if those are ultimately out of our control in terms of the realms of safety and security, we do our best. And we can always care for the heart that is in pain, that's unsettled, the body that is tired, aching, weary. This quality of care sometimes is just in the receiving. We receive the heart, receive thoughts, receive emotions with kindness, spaciousness, acceptance. Maybe it has more of that flavor just of ease, of peace. There is stress, and we can be okay with stress, wanting, worry, receiving it with an open heart, mind. The body changing, There's pleasure, there's pain. We can release it from the preferences of the mind, from the contraction of the preferences of the mind. It's okay as it is. There is a deeper peace and strength of mind possible with whatever is happening in the body, the breath, the other sense doors, and even the mind itself. And if there is even a semblance of that, how important it is to feel the relief of that ease, the restfulness, stability, the peace, the acceptance of things as they are right now. It may not be how we want them to be, but we don't have to lose access to our goodness, our capacity to care. To the freedom that we know is possible in any moment, no matter what is happening. The liberation of heart available at any moment. And each moment changing. The mind must find its way back anew. So just building this continuity of attention with the body, the heart, mind, the breath, whatever is real, whatever is happening. And perhaps paying special attention to the quality of the heart, quality of the attention, inclining toward peace, inclining towards kindness, no matter what we encounter. Finding our way to that freedom that we know is possible. my bells are getting more and more feeble as my time goes on away from home.
They sound like the whispering of the stars.
Mm.
Mm. Mm. Thank you, Jesse, for your instructions. And I know Jesse's helping pack up his grandfather's house. So after he died, so it's a lot of work. And I thank you for making it to the Sunday sitting. Mm.
It is a refuge.
Yeah, it is. I hope so. Mm. In the Northern Hemisphere, this is quite a sacred time in terms of this shift from a lot of light to a lot of dark. It's like that transition, and the winter stars are coming up above, and they're like old friends that get us through the winter. So it's another time. It'd be good to talk more about being comfortable with the darkness, the invisible, the shift into um, having to go deep inside to get through winter. That's like part of how one gets through winter, at least before electricity. And of course, in the southern hemisphere, we're going from dark to light. So again, for all of us on the planet, it is a time of great change to be deeply respected. I wanted to talk a little bit about a neighbor of mine. Her husband died last, I think, early spring, maybe a little bit before that. They married very young. She's from Ireland originally. He's from the Pyrenees. He had a wonderful little restaurant up in town. And um, when I would bump into her as best I can since that time, I feel like I've been trying to help her get through that darkness of such a big loss. But you watch someone's life change so dramatically. Um, she tried recently twice to get her driver's license, and she failed the test 2 times. And where we live, that makes it impossible. Really, if you live alone out here, you have to have a car. It's, the neighbors have been pitching in to bring her stuff, but it's she doesn't want to be in that situation. I bumped into her yesterday, and she's like, I just can't do this. I can't um, go any place. Like I can't go anywhere. So she's decided to sell her home soon. So I asked where she was going, and of course I have the whole ancestors in Ireland. So I was kind of joking with her about it, and I'm like, "Are you really gonna go back to Ireland?" Like, it's really. I expressed this ambivalence, and she said, "Oh, she still has the Irish accent." So she's like, "Oh, don't worry, dear. Don't worry, dear." She's like, "Ireland is not what it used to be, darling." It's like, she's like, I'm like, why? And she's like, Oh, now there's many more kinds of people than Irish people there. It's much better. There's so many more people than Irish people. And I just like cracked up. I just thought that is awesome. That's why she can go back. Uh, so, but we talked a little more and I said how much I would miss her. And she said, Dear, my time here has run its course. And I think they were here probably 50 years, at least, my time here has run its course. And I've watched her go through this so many losses. And she said, losing my license was a huge death. She said, nobody might see it like that, but for me, it was a huge death. And she said, I've been struggling with this and I'm tired of not accepting it. I'm tired of that. She said, I've got to just accept that my time has run its course. And I really felt like that was such a beautiful description of how, like, pretty soon, I think maybe now the comet that has been visiting from 80,000 years ago, it's run its course for me in terms of being able to see it. But countries run their course, right? Families, infections run their course in good ways, right? Or not, or floods run their course, stars, just sunrises, sunsets. There's a way in which Lokadhamma, the Pali word, the Buddhist world, Lokadhamma, the way of the world, it's things arise and pass. Yeah, all conditioned things. And that sense of understanding this brings the greatest kind of happiness, which is peace. It's really been powerful to go through this time period with her and see her going through so much. And I really feel she's at peace with this decision. So I wanted to just kind of go through, like, this isn't at all in depth 7 factors of awakening talk, but it just to consider the first four of them and how important courage is in the face of transitions and changes, getting through an election, right? Like that the mindfulness, which is the first factor of awakening, which is like the warp of the weaving of awakening, right? That sense of Jesse's instructions were so much in terms of that receptive attention, the accepting of how things are just as they are, that the attention that is intending to understand rather than to judge, that intention is so powerful. And of course, I could bring in rain and its opposites, but again, there's not enough time. But just to consider the receptive attention and the recognition of how things are happening, the acceptance or the resistance, the interest or the boredom or indifference, and the non-identification, right? And not taking it personally. This is all like the bringing in these factors that are actually not personal. They're we can call them up. We can get to know what they are. They're spiritual factors of awakening. And of course, then if we have some momentum with that, even for a few seconds, it's possible for investigation to come. That the Buddha described it as a light going on in a dark room. So again, that if you think of like waking up, right, and that sense of that insight is possible if we have some continuity with the mindfulness. And again, insight into what? But particularly in this tradition, it's insight into impermanence or anicca. And there is no end to that. There's a vastness and depth and breadth of insight into anicca that is everything. Whether it's milliseconds or quantum perspective or eons. And so as the Buddha taught, it's like if we understand something about impermanence or anicca, right, that we can understand dukkha, that because there's nothing permanent, then, no matter where we look, again, vast, small, there's nothing God, human, pea shoot, right? Like it's like no matter what, anything that's conditioned will pass away. That experience is not reliable. That essence of dukkha is based on anicca. That experience itself, because it's impermanent, isn't reliable, and that there's a suffering in that we don't understand, right? The more we understand or have insight into dukkha, the less we suffer. That's, the end of suffering is really, really important, in terms of understanding what the Buddha taught. That when we have insight into this, there's less resistance, less suffering. And of course, anatta, which really also distinguishes the Buddha's teaching in the way of its relationship with anicca, dukkha, and then anatta, that sense that no matter how close you get to something and look with the most powerful um, microscopes we have now on the planet, or how vast we go with the investigation, there's not something permanent that we can find, lasting. Anatta, no, it's important to distinguish. It's like no solid, no solid self, right? That's what its meaning is. So one of my favorite things that Sayadaw U Pandita taught me in '84 about the 7 factors of awakening is that if there's the mindfulness, not that much continuity, but if it's genuine and enough continuity with the mindfulness, investigation will appear. And it's often just that question. It's that question like, what is really happening, free of the concept, free of memory. And then there'll be more of a momentum. He called it coming face to face with the object, or just face to face with what's happening. He called this third one, it's been always translated before that as virya, as energy, but he called it courageous energy. And I would say we need more courageous energy right now than we do much of anything except for compassion, I think, and equanimity, but just that courage, right? The courage to be with things as they are, to connect, to come face to face. And of course, that the energy of that does not mean that we're not tired sometimes. So that if we're doing that kind of courageous energy with mental pain, physical pain, emotional pain, right? And it's chronic, particularly, the courageous energy is going into connecting with that pain, right? With being with the pain. It might not be that one has a lot of energy for other things. It doesn't mean that we're not paying attention. It doesn't mean that we don't have the courage. It just means that that's where the attention's going. It's okay. It's like there's nothing wrong with getting tired, but it's also important as we teach over and over again. If it's chronic and we're drowning, of course you move away. There's a new photo. I'll probably talk about this again sometime, but I get excited about the new photos of black holes. They're just so amazing. And there's a new photo of like this star getting pulled into a black hole. And there's another star that's not. There's a triple view. They've never seen it before. And there's one star that's getting sucked in, and there's one star that's not getting sucked in. So the idea is that you're the star that doesn't get sucked in, right? We try to teach the strength to not get sucked into, or if you're sucked in, to get out. I'm emphasizing this because these times require it. So it's said that if your attention is staying with this courageous energy, and again, what happens is that you break the pleasure pain cycle. So the energy starts being able to bring more attentiveness to pleasure, pain, and neutral. It's like there's no resistance to the pain because there's interest in it. There's enough energy to be interested in is the instructions that in how things are, things, the truth. So the description of this in the Buddhist Pali Dictionary of PT, of rapture, is the deep delight in the truth, no matter what's happening. So of course that there can be dukkha, but the suffering with it is gone because one's interested in it. It doesn't mean it's not painful. And that's what's so important. We're not getting rid of pain. We're shifting how the attention is relating to it. It's always that shift in how we're relating, how we're relating. If I'm fortunate to be free of work, I walk up to this lookout near my house lately. As the sunset's setting earlier, I tend to be going later than the sunset because I'm not quite finished work. But I got out a little early and I got up to the lookout, and there's rarely people out that time of night here. And this young adult, he's 22, that I've really seen around the neighborhood since I moved in here. It's like 14 years ago. It'll be 15 next in December. And I know his dad a little bit. I know the family a little bit. Um, and I know his dad is voting for somebody that his son and I would both be upset at, but I think his son is really upset. Like, and his son is 22. He can't get out yet of the house. And I just, so I'm walking up toward him and I get the vibe like that he needs so much space. And I'm also sensing like a struggle I remember at that age, like this, it's like you're howling inside. You're howling, you're just, there's so much despair and there's so much struggle. And I felt like I had all the resources I could try to help him with. And it was like, there's no way I can barely walk by this kid. So I gave him so much space. I'm walking through this thick grass and cutting my leg, then I'm like, oh, this kid needs, and I'm tiptoeing, and I walk back and forth at this place past him, and he turned and looked at me just for a few seconds, and it was just this look like pleading, pleading with me for space. Oh, I still feel it. I talked with my neighbor about him because I know one of my neighbors knows them better than I do, and she's like, which a lot of people are now. She's like, I'm at my limit. I can't do anything. Like she was like feeling like I was pushing her, and I said, look, I don't expect you to do anything, but I'd like you to ask your son who is away in college. I'd like to ask you to call him. And she said, okay, around Christmas. And I said, no, you have to have your son call him as soon as possible. Just try. I can't make anything else happen here, but it's like, I know he needs somebody that he'll actually talk to, hopefully. Yeah, we all know this place of despair. And I feel like what's so important is to value it. This is what's so off in our culture, is to feel like it's something unworthy of our attention. And to me, it's like we lose our goodness in our resistance to it. Everyone loses our goodness in disconnecting rather than feeling that overwhelm, feeling the helplessness in the face of suffering, just like the Buddha taught. It's like this is the doorway to care about pain, compassion. Like it's like we understand anicca, dukkha, anatta, yes. And if we're spiraling from doubt into despair, and it's like to understand it's a path into compassion. And I must say, like the magnitude of that struggle that I could feel in him, like was so beautiful. It was so pure. There was something so uncensored. And I hope he's able to get enough help to move through it. I really do. We all do. And I find that when people resist it, there's less compassion. So if we're feeling some measure of that, maybe not so extreme as when we're young, but that level where we resist it and then get indifferent rather than connect, right? You connect with it and accept it and feel compassion for it. There's more compassion. And awesomely, there's more compassion for everyone. I just think it's so important. And I think the other possibility is important. The last week, I have several PTs now, and I have a PT at the hospital now, and she started late. I'm not blaming her. It's not her fault at all, but she started late. So I left PT late, but I often have a bunch of errands if I go up to 30-minute drive from where I live. And so I was like, I was running late and I was walking down the hallway in the hospital. Like, oh, I was like starting to speed up and I turned the corner and I'm like, that feeling when you really can't believe what you're seeing? And it looked like a big, huge stuffed animal, like a big horse, right? Like, and I'm like, and I'm in a hurry, right? So like, I'm keep going. I'm like, that's like, that's like a real horse. There's a horse. There's a miniature horse in the hospital. Can you believe it? I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? It's an alive horse, you know? And then this whole, like, the wonderful thing to me about Vipassana is that there's so much you can be aware of in a short period of time. So there's like memories of like when I was a little kid, I would sneak away to this really shabby place, like this friend next door. We went to this shabby place where you could ride horses. It was a horrible place, and I didn't know what allergies are. And I'm super allergic, like on the top charts of being a super allergic person. I'm super allergic to horses. And nobody noticed, of course, that I went away. But when I came back, I would be sick all week. Like I'd just get better and I'd go again. And I did that for a while until one of the horses that we had no instruction, the horse threw me. And ever since then, I have been afraid of horses. And so I'm walking down toward this horse, and it's a miniature horse. It's not a pony. I didn't know they even existed. And it was this vibe. The vibe was totally the opposite of this kid on the lookout I'm describing. This miniature horse is a therapy horse. And it's like this amazing therapist. Like this horse is amazing. And I like go up to it and I'm just like, first of all, things have changed. Since I was a kid, there are many good things that have happened. And I would call this amazing. Like when I was a kid, there were no horses in hospitals, right? This is not in the 50s. There were no, I can guarantee you the idea of a horse in a hospital is like not even a concept. And here we are. And it's like not only there, but it's like welcomed and appreciated. And so, and the woman who owns the horse, she's like, "Do you want to sit down? Do you want your picture taken?" I'm like, "No, but okay, I'll sit down." And they were like wanting me to hang out with the horse. And it was, oh, there it is. Look at this horse. Look at its bangs. And you can't see the eyes, but underneath the bangs are like these awesome eyes. Darby, Darby, its name. Anyway, joyful interest, joyful interest, joy, right? Like, and this horse brings out so much joy and compassion for people. So important, right? Like of all the places, I think that at this point, because I was so impressed with this miniature horse, I think we should have them on every corner. Like I think they should be like everywhere for a while. Just like, oh, come on, like this is there's the helplessness we feel in the face of all the suffering, right? And there's so much need for this kind of energy of just pure ease of connection. The lady that owned this horse, she was teaching the horse how to count so it can count with its hoofs. And you see, any of this kind of stuff makes us happy. So hence, there's joy, there's black holes, there's despair. Like there's all a way that we need how to learn how to balance with this, the way of things, how things are. And I'm offering that I think the courageous energy is a key when things are more turbulent, at least outwardly. And I wanted to describe something to you about the floods in Chiang Mai because it was so interesting to me. I hope you'll find it interesting. There were 4 floods, very unreported. And so it's monsoon there, and that's expected that there'll be floods. And people who live there feel quite confident in dealing with them. They know what to do mostly, right? And so people were saying, oh, yeah, we have the first flood was, oh, this is like the 5-year floods we get. And then the second flood was, oh, yeah, this is like the 10-year floods we get. Like they have it all known, right? And then the third flood, um, You could feel that sense of like, oh, this is known, shifting to what we're all calling with global climate change unprecedented, right? So it's shifting. And I went through many days through this, but this day I thought was the worst. And I went through these days with the manager of Steve's condo, with his caregiver, like other people. It wasn't like I was just um, by myself learning about what was happening. And so this was a day that we all thought was the worst. So it took the caregiver. She lives half an hour away by car. She had already gone from using a car to her brother's motorcycle to parking the car 2 miles from where Steve was. And there's an ancient city within Chiang Mai, and there's a moat around it. So I said, well, where are you putting the motorcycle? And she said, oh, up above the moat in the ancient city. And I was like, oh, that's why they invented moats. You know, I didn't know why there were moats, like I thought it was just, the castle. But actually it's like, oh, there's a moat around the old city so that if there were bad floods, monsoons, it would protect things up inside. And so she would park way up there. And that day she had to walk into where Steve is with the water up to her knees and rising a bit. It rose more during the day, and there were many other things. It would be a 5-hour talk, but there were many things that were hard that day. And so the manager of the condo called me and said, just can you help coordinate the caregiver and Steve so that we can bring the caregiver out down the side road out to the main road, and Steve can try to find a boat. So okay. So you see things are changing, right? Things are starting to get weird. But so, I'm always on the phone with all this stuff and I can hear them all giggling. They're laughing, the water's rising, but it's all out of control, manageable, right? It's hard to describe it, but everybody was in a good mood because it was still manageable, but very different. And the water's rising, it's up to Steve's thigh. He hails a boat. The rescue boats are already, getting scarce. And she goes off and it goes off down. She's being pulled by this guy. And they have to wait for him to come back because the water's rising and that guy pulls them back in the dinghy, right? So it's like, okay, it's all under control. The weather said it was under control. I thought maybe she wouldn't make it back to see Steve for a few days. That would be hard, but okay. And it was particularly a one I mentioned, the giggling. There was something quite beautiful about it. And then that night, it started raining hard in the mountains. And, I get texts from the caregiver and she's like, everyone's putting sandbags up. It's like we're all getting prepared for something bad. And that's the fourth flood. It was catastrophic, unprecedented. No one got that it was going to go. And I watched things go from that kind of giggling, doing the best you can. We're going to do okay with this too. So I'm walking out of the PT, the same place I saw the horse. I'm walking out, and it's the complete opposite experience of the horse. I look down at my phone, and I get a message from the condo manager that says, "You're in charge of Steve's evacuation." And I'm like, I'm in Hawaii. I text back, what? I'm in Hawaii. Like, I don't think so. And she said, yes, you're in charge of Steve's evacuation. She said, we're all getting evacuated. Our houses are flooding. There's no staff at the condo anymore. She's like, the water's going to turn brown. There's no electricity, blah, blah, blah. Like, on and on, that people get, electrocuted if the electricity is on with the flood. So that had happened a number of times. So the whole city they turned the electricity off, et cetera, et cetera. There was no more giggling, including me, because I don't know where I can go with this, right? Oh, it's not a question and answer time unless there's something important, Annie. I don't know. Did you do that on purpose? Okay, never mind. Okay, so hmm. Oh, by the way, last text from the condo manager was, "There's no more rescue boats." And I wrote back and I said, "That's helpful." I'll scratch that one off the list that I don't even know what to do. So I had to ask the caregiver for help. There was nothing else I could do. She has a daughter. It took her 4 hours to get there. The water's up to her neck. She was like so heroic. I can't even tell you how grateful I am. And she finally, the police wouldn't let her through the road. They finally let her through. There were two men who lived near the condo that found a dinghy and they got Steve out. But in the meantime, I'm trying to find a hotel that isn't full that will take him. They wouldn't let me make any reservations. And the last thing they said to me was, he can only arrive by boat. So I'm like, what? What? What if like he walks part? Nope. What if he what? Nope. He can only arrive by boat. But as you know already, it all worked out. But then she had to go back 4 hours, the caregiver, and her house was filled with water up to the ceiling. It took her 4 more hours to get out. And she texted me. I stayed up all night because of the time zone distance, time change. And I said, "How is it?" And she said, "Chiang Mai's peoples are almost 90% staying with tears." 90% of Chiang Mai's people, almost 90% stay with tears. You know who the other 10% people are? The people who are wealthy enough, right? And I wrote, what can happen? Is she said, "Well, it's hopeless for any of us to wait for help." And I feel like why I'm talking about this, there's a reason, is because I really feel like with global warming, we have to be prepared for this. We have to be prepared for that sense that it goes from giggly to unraveling to being dependent on people's kindness. And I felt like I was so dependent. Oh, all right. I was so dependent on the caregiver. And we've really tried to help her. She lost everything in the house and her friends, and we've been helping her. So we want to reassure you about that. Um, and I feel so much closer to her. Like it was such a powerful time. I'm glad that she knows American movies because I said, "I'm going to start calling you Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible." So I call her Tom Cruise now because she's definitely that kind of hero. And I think the seven factors of enlightenment, they're not always going to all appear when we're in difficult situations, but I have to say, even the next few weeks are going to be a difficult situation. And are we going to be able to be calm or kind to ourselves, kind to ourselves? It's like we have a print of Reps's amazing print that he did during World War II, trying to get into Japan. And it says, it's a beautiful sume painting of a tea bowl. And it says, "Drinking a cup of tea, I stopped the war. Drinking a cup of tea, I stopped the war." And they let him into Japan because they got it, right? During World War II. And once in a while, the mother, old, the old mother cat, she once in a while will come in and she always goes over to that spot and she sits up there and lays down on right under that photo, like right under, oh, sorry, right under that print. And it's really helpful for me. I look over and I'm like, oh yeah, drinking a cup of tea. I stopped the war. Or Thich Nhat Hanh's refugee boat, being calm, being kind. I went to Springfield College in Springfield, Massachusetts, 1969, and I've mentioned this professor. Um, I didn't know him. Haven't taken a course with him right away, but then when I met him, I did take a course. So this was spring. um, and it was a time where there was so much turbulence. There was so much angst around ghetto riots and the Vietnam War and just like the politics. And I don't know if you guys remember, but McGovern won the election in Massachusetts for president, but it was the only state in the United States where the state went McGovern, everybody else went Republican. And I happened to be, it was my senior year at that time, and um, I was put in a school that was very conservative. It was a way of punishing me from the education department of the school for being so radical. And I was put in this very conservative school with a very conservative teacher. And the day before the election, I asked her who she was going to vote for, and she said McGovern. And so I walk out of there going, the election's a cinch. It's going to go Democrat, right? Like, and I was so shocked. I'm just saying how naive I was. I was so shocked. I really have to say, I just thought almost everybody believed the same thing as the majority of people in Massachusetts, right? And now it's like, it's this shocking after shock that um, even just like it's probably a whole science of really understanding why people want to believe fake news. Like, why would you want to like why would we want to believe something that isn't true, right? Like, I think that this level of the shifting again, but I always look back at this like place where this professor, he was a Quaker. I didn't know it at the time, but it was sort of like this peak of like the buildings being taken over, and it was so bad. And I remember going to his door of the class, and the door there was a big note on it that said "Away for the day." And I remember really seeking him out the next day, and I said, "Where did you go?" And he was kind of like in a place, not exactly like the kid up on the young man up at the lookout that I described, with so much angst, so much struggle. He felt so bad about what was happening. And he went out into the forest for the day. And he came back completely peaceful, completely back with his intention of peace and nonviolence and kindness and loving nature and trying to, he was one of the first ecologists. Um, and so I think that this is so important for us when we look at mindfulness. It's one context, mindfulness, investigation, courageous energy. That's like the linchpin, right? Joyful interest, calm, concentration, equanimity, peace. It's like always there for us if we take the time, right? And it's so much about taking the time, coming to the sittings. Last week when we were doing the Q&A, I just felt that like that joy of getting to sit together, just like even if we never talk, just the coming together to sit, that drinking a cup of tea to stop the war. So I'm wishing us so much courage, so much courage. Really just like buckle down, lay low, so much courage. Stay with this intention to be kind, to be peaceful, no matter what's happening. It's not that we won't be going all over the place. Like I don't mean that. I mean to be, as Jesse was saying in the instructions, you're okay with what's ever happening, being with what is. But it's also just like committing to finding peace at times within it, right? That eye of the hurricane. Because boy, does this planet need it. This planet needs us to be calm, courageous, and peaceful. Okay. Happy Halloween. Good luck this week.
Thank you, Michelle. Hmm. Just a reminder that I think on the 3rd, next Sunday, is the daylight
All right.
savings
Yep, it is.
ends or begins or changes. And so Hawaii will stay at 2 o'clock, but everyone else will be an hour earlier, right? Yes. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad I could be clear. So yeah, we'll send out an email reminder as well before Sunday. Yeah. Take care, everyone. Happy Halloween. Dia de los Muertos. All Saints, All Souls.